Republicans gathered for a closed-door caucus lunch when Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell Addison Mitchell McConnell Sticking points force stimulus package talks to spill into Sunday GOP drafting stimulus package without deal with Democrats' number 2 Republican, loose ends, but there is agreement on general contours of stimulus deal. More R. Key broke the news. One of their own, Senator Rand Paul R. Key, had tested positive for the coronavirus.
Colleagues, as everyone now knows, the coronavirus has arrived in the Senate. There are at least 5 senators who are in self-quarantine at the moment, McConnell said, making a public announcement from the Senate floor.
The first known case of a senator contracting the disease set off a domino effect throughout the chamber as colleagues tried to recall the last time they were in close contact with Paul, who was in the Capitol complex as recently as Sunday.
Senator Mitt Romney, R. Utah, told reporters on Sunday afternoon that senators would have to weigh whether they would need to self-quarantine. Only hours later, he announced that he would.
Since Senator Romney sat next to Senator Paul for extended periods in recent days and consistent with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention guidance, the attending physician has ordered him to immediately self-quarantine and not to vote on the Senate floor, Romney's office said in a statement on Sunday.
He was preceded by Senator Mike Lee, R. Utah, who became the first senator to announce he would self-quarantine because of Paul.
Upon learning that my colleague Senator Paul tested positive for COVID-19, I consulted the attending physician of the U.S. Congress Dr. Harding, Lee said in a statement. Given the timing, proximity, and duration of my exposure to Senator Paul, she directed me to self-quarantine for 14 days.
They join a handful of their colleagues who have had to isolate after being exposed to someone who tested positive for the coronavirus. Sens. Cory Gardner Scott Gardner Cory Gardner to self-quarantine. President Trump called on senators to deliver on conservation bill. They listened. Giffords endorses Biden as gun safety choice for President Moore, R. Colo, and Rick Scott, R. Florida.
Are already self-quarantined for exposure unrelated to Paul.
Sens. Lindsey Graham Lindsey Olin Graham. The memo, Democrats grapple with virus response. 5 sticking points to AT coronavirus deal. Democrats balk at 200 rebate checks in stimulus plan. Moore, RSC, and Ted Cruz, R. Texas, had also self-quarantined for unrelated cases but are out of isolation. With 5 GOP senators in quarantine, the margin in the Senate is temporarily 48 Republicans and 47 Democrats.
After McConnell's announcement, Senator Jerry Moran, R. Con, made an observation to his colleagues during the lunch, that he had seen Paul in the Senate gym just that morning.
The disclosure sparked 2 questions: why was the Senate gym still operating while gyms across the country have shuttered, and why had Paul decided to come to the Capitol even though he was awaiting test results?
I've never commented about a fellow senator's choices, actions. Never once. This, America, is absolutely irresponsible. You cannot be near other people while waiting for coronavirus test results. It endangers others and likely increases the spread of the virus, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, D.A.R.E.S. tweeted on Sunday.
Senator Kevin Cramer, RND, added that Paul's decision to come to the Senate gym was peculiar.
He's a physician. He's able to do his own risk assessment, and he evidently miscalculated, Cramer said. People have self-quarantined for less.
Scott, during an interview with CNN from quarantine, added that he would like to understand exactly where Rand was and what the risk is.
I think everybody ought to be talking to the Senate physician about what their risk is and whether they need to be quarantined, he said.
Paul's office stressed that he left the Capitol once he found out that he had tested positive.
We want to be clear, Senator Paul left the Senate immediately upon learning of his diagnosis. He had zero contact with anyone and went into quarantine. Insinuations such as those below that he went to the gym after learning of his results are just completely false and irresponsible, Paul's office said in a tweet.
Asked when Paul got tested, and why did not self-quarantine until he got his results, Gore told TheHill that Paul decided to get tested after attending an event where 2 individuals subsequently tested positive for COVID-19, even though he wasn't aware of any direct contact with either one of them. Additionally, due to a prior lung injury, and subsequent surgery on his lung, Senator Paul is in a higher risk category as it relates to pulmonary issues, he added.
Even as some colleagues raised eyebrows about the disclosure that Paul had tested positive, there were few signs that senators were going to take extra steps to distance themselves in the immediate wake of the news.
Senators were spotted in close clusters on the Senate floor during a 6 p.m. vote. Only one senator, Senator Bernie Sanders (IVT), missed the vote in addition to the 5 senators who are quarantined.
Senator Doug Jones, D.A., made a cross with his fingers as a reporter approached him in the Senate basement. Senator Jack Francis Reed McConnell sets Friday night deadline for bipartisan deal on stimulus. Senators press EU to sanction Putin associate for election meddling. Overnight defense. Pentagon confirms Iran behind recent rocket attack. Esper says all options on the table. Military restricts service member travel over coronavirus. More. DRI extended an arm and jokingly told a reporter to stay away.
Sens. Todd Christopher Young GOP lukewarm on talk of airline bailout. Trump, GOP scramble to keep economy from derailing. Vulnerable Republicans dodge questions on support for Obamacare lawsuit. More. Rind, Mike Crapo Dean Crapo sticking points for stimulus package talks to spill into Sunday. GOP seeks up to $0 billion to maximize financial help to airlines, other impacted industries. McConnell sets Friday night deadline for bipartisan deal on stimulus. More. Idaho, John Anthony Barrasso stimulus plan hinges on McConnell, Schumer repairing toxic relationship. Overnight energy, Democratic lawmakers seek emissions reductions in airline bailout. House Dems warn Trump against oil industry bailout. GOP senators ask Saudis to stabilize oil market. GOP senators ask Saudis to stabilize oil market. More. RYO, and Pat Joseph Toomey NSA improperly collected U.S. phone records in October. New documents show overnight defense. Pick for South Korean envoy splits with Trump on nuclear threat. McCain blasts move to suspend Korean military exercises. White House defends Trump salute of North Korean General W.H. Backpedals on Trump's due process remark on guns. More. We're standing shoulder to shoulder on their way up to the vote.
Senator John Neely Kennedy Moore, Arla, told reporters that we're getting advice so far from the attending physician's office that we don't need to quarantine.
Graham added that the attending physician had greenlighted the Senate GOP lunch that was held on Sunday.
That's good enough for me, Graham said. If I can go to a lunch, I can keep going to my job. And if I have any symptoms, I'll go take a test.
Senator John Cornyn stimulus plan hinges on McConnell, Schumer repairing toxic relationship. McConnell takes reins of third coronavirus bill. Senate GOP expects vote on third coronavirus package next week. More. Texas said he wished Paul well, and that although he had been in the same room as Paul, he hadn't been in close proximity.
Asked if it was appropriate for Paul to go to the gym, Cornyn, a member of the informal gym caucus, added, "I wasn't there, so it doesn't affect me."
But Senator Brian Emanuel Schatz senators consider proxy voting during coronavirus outbreak. Silicon Valley, HHS hit by cyberattack amid coronavirus outbreak. Senators urge FCC to shore up internet access for students. Sanders ramps up Facebook ad spending. Dems ask DHS to delay Real ID deadline. Democratic senators urge FCC to let schools use funds for student internet access. More. Hawaii tweeted that he was wearing a surgical mask out of an abundance of caution.
I have no specific reason to worry any more than anyone else, but given the physical proximity to members, staff, and especially people who could be vulnerable, I decided to be as careful as possible. Stay safe all, he said.
And Paul's disclosure has sparked renewed discussion about the Senate's schedule. The chamber is supposed to be in schedule through the first week of April, but rumors have swirled for days that McConnell will let senators leave town once they pass a mammoth stimulus package.
I believe that our first obligation is to finish our work for the American people. After that, I think it would be wise to accelerate the break that was scheduled for April, said Senator Susan Collins. Susan Margaret Collins' small business rescue package expected to swell to $0 billion or more. NRSC outraces DSCC in February. Senate coronavirus stimulus talks spill into Saturday. More. Maine.
Sens. Dick Durbin Richard Dick Joseph Durbin McConnell sets Friday night deadline for bipartisan deal on stimulus. TheHill's morning report. GOP unveils historic U.S. rescue effort. Coronavirus anxiety spreads across Capitol Hill. More. TheHill and Rob Portman. Rob Jones Portman sticking points for stimulus package talks to spill into Sunday. McConnell sets Friday night deadline for bipartisan deal on stimulus. TheHill's morning report. GOP unveils historic U.S. rescue effort. More. Ohio also re-upped their push for the Senate to adopt remote voting, something McConnell has objected to so far.
Durbin said on Sunday that the prospect of 5 senators self-quarantining was inevitable and could grow.
This could grow, let's be very honest about it, and the numbers could grow to the point it could reach an extreme where there's a question of an actual quorum on the floor of the Senate, he added.